One of the quotes I always liked, it's a relatively simple quote, but it talks about the fact that most people miss opportunity because it shows up dressed in overalls and looks like work. I think that always stood out to me as saying, okay, there's a lot of stuff that a lot of people want to do,
Yeah.
but most times that difference between, okay, a great plan and a goal, so it's a lot of dreams, the difference between those things and making it and executing, making that thing happen, is that real fuzzy, hairy, ugly, stinky thing in the middle called actually getting it done. And I think that's where certainly a lot of us die on the path to that thing. But I also think that's really where if you can in those moments persevere through, that's when the actual results happen because it really does feel nice sometimes to talk about what we're gonna do. You've kind of jumped off the dream cliff into the valley of hard work towards an objective. And I'm curious what you think maybe your advice would be, or maybe what you learned so far in the valley of the grind.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. I guess I'm still figuring that out myself. Um, Interesting. And I agree with you. What you had said a little bit to to the behalf of where you get pretty excited about something and you're talking about it, and you know it's kind of a deal to where, man, I'd really love to do that, or this is what I plan on doing, and you're excited about it and telling someone else about that being the goal or what you plan on accomplishing. And it's always a lot easier to talk about it when you're doing it, until you get into it. And then obviously that changes quite a bit as far as the realism to it when it comes to schedule and time and making things work. But I'm with you. I think the daily grind of it is surreal. Um, when you're kind of having to do it, and you know you're over the part where you're talking about it. You're over the fun part. You're then figuring out how to try and make it work, and I think that can be really tough. Like from day in and day out, a lot of times, or at least a bit of a struggle, I should say. I know it is for me, at least anyway. When you compromise what time that you have that you wanted to spend on things that you want to do, and then you turn it into, well, this is what I said I was going to do, so I can either do it, or maybe I can just lay down here and cry about it, or bleed, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah, for sure. And I think that's something that's that really the laying down and crying part of it. That part can feel pretty good too, especially if when you're not actually working towards maybe making something happen. But so how do you feel? What does it feel like to be like in motion and still in pain? Just because of all the things you have to do to kind of get in motion, get rolling towards the goal that you're trying to work towards, versus maybe the inertia of so. But back when you could still complain, but you weren't doing anything. Like what do you think the difference is there? How's that affect your kind of outlook on the work that you're going through?
Oh man, I don't know. So I mean, I guess there's definitely a positive to it. If you manage to take the time and think about what you're doing when you're kind of in the middle of whatever it is you're doing,
Yeah,
um, I think it's definitely helpful to where you can kind of look at it, and maybe I should do a better job of that, because I feel like that sometimes you're just kind of you're doing what you're doing, and you're just like, man, this isn't all that fun at the moment. But you could also look at it too, to where I am attempting to gain some traction and some ground. But
yeah,
I think each time you can kind of get up and do a little bit more as to what you're going after. For sure, I think it's super helpful, as opposed to the times where you sit there and talk about it. But I think also the the cop out of the complaining I mean, you only do that every so often. Typically, the complaining part only happens when you know you talk to someone about what you were initially supposed to be doing, or someone talks to you about how you're making out with that. You know, typically the
Yeah,
people that are checking in on you, like, oh yeah, hey, how's that going? How's those classes going? Oh
yeah,
man, I haven't started them. You know, just been so busy, work's going on, and this and that,
yeah,
and like you said, the excuse part as well. But it is super. I think that's super helpful um, to what you were asking as far as what is the difference to it. You know, how do you feel um, knowing that you're doing it as opposed to still making excuses for it. But I don't know. It's almost like a double edged sword. Like
yeah,
through the process of while you're doing it, it can also be pretty tough, I think. And then I think also too though if you take the time to think about it, it's like, well, I'm 50% there. I'm three quarters of the way there. I'm
yeah.
almost there. I mean, maybe that's kind of something to. I'll let you know, I guess, when I finish dragging through the end
Yeah.
of things that I'm doing. But I think it's the same for you as well, though. I would have to ask. I guess I'd have to ask what your thoughts are on it as well, because I know there's been lots of different things that you've kind of jumped into or whatever your endeavors might be. What your thoughts of it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that from a what makes you feel like it's worth it in the middle of it is seems to be repeatedly whether or not it aligns with what you've kind of convinced yourself to be the either an end goal or maybe a stop on the way towards that end goal. Because I think there's a lot of grind that we can get into, and I mean I think so. First off, I would say for me, it depends on what my starting point is, like how miserable or bad where I'm at, where I have been when I start looking for something different. That always
Sure.
helps me say, okay, like I'm doing this and it's not optimal, or maybe the commitment isn't optimal. I remember like going to school while working the full-time job, same deal. And for me, I think I was driving from where I worked over to it was like 45 minutes to where I was going to school, and then it was like an hour home. And a lot of those nights you get home after like everyone's asleep. Like you wake up, go to work, everyone's asleep. You get home, everyone's asleep. So that's probably the most challenging pieces because you're seeing an impact to the relationships that you have, which as we've talked about before, that those are kind of primary importance, but there is a short-term impact there in some of these cases where you're seeing that you're not able to do what you'd like to do in those cases in important things, hopefully for the goal of maybe working towards something bigger that long term helps you kind of facilitate those relationships or have better relationships with those same most important people. So I think that there's a difference between like, okay, I'm trading current pain and hopefully a more intense dose for less pain in the future. That's kind of the thing that has helped me get through some of those periods of time. But I also think like there's a it's pretty easy when we talk about grind. And I think the grind term is a pretty loaded one. So what are you grinding? What are you grinding for? So like we both when we were talking about this podcast, we said okay, first let's wrap up our coffee drinks, right? Because there's a grind process there that produces pretty quickly some caffeine, some energy, and probably maybe a little bit of sense of comfort, like you can take something on. And I think that like there's grind processes that give you that little short term bursts. And I also think there's a focus culturally on just grinding for the sake of grind. Like always be looking for the next thing. Always be looking for the thing that's gonna like the next business opportunity, how to get bigger, how to make more money. So I think that's if that's the mindset, it can be pretty exhausting because you just simply burn out. Like you just
Yeah.
keep looking for the next thing always. And I think I've fallen prey to that personally myself several times because I do like continuing to move forward, trying to find better ways to do things. And I think that if you're not able to pause, reflect, and then also like make sure that what you're doing aligns with where you want to go with life, then you're gonna find yourself in the middle of something and you're not gonna understand why. And then you're just gonna be tired and frustrated. but I also think, and I feel like I'm rambling a little bit here, but I also think it's important to remember why you're doing it in the middle of it, because sometimes it's just that you're tired. It's not so much that you're not doing something that's good. It's that you just haven't maybe sat down and said, okay, I signed up to do this because it is the thing that's going to take me to the next place that I've got to I've got to move forward with life, and this is it. But when you're in the middle of it, you forget that. So I think that grind piece, okay, keep it in perspective. What's important, why you're doing it, not grinding just for the grinding sake. And then of course picking activities that aren't like a treadmill type thing where you're just gonna just you have to be staying on there forever and doing it versus something that's kind of like a trail type of a climb or a hike where there's a destination up there that you're getting to and then you're stopping, stepping off and getting back to the important things or it enables you to do those important things. But that was a that was a long answer, but that's how I would kind of separate out those things personally. And I think just some of the pitfalls would be that idea that it's pretty easy once you start kind of thinking about, okay, how can I change my life? How can I do these things? There's a whole lot of options out there, and you can
Yeah.
end up just burning through all of the candle and not hitting all of them. So
You know, yeah, that's good. I agree with that. I would say that there's a lot of good points to that for sure. I think you definitely have to um, remember why you're doing what you're doing when you're in the middle of going through something,
yeah,
um, and and remember where you started. That's a great point too. I think remember where you started at, and what it feels like to be where you are, and that's probably
yeah,
one of that should be one of the biggest motivational pieces to it. I think even if not the grind part, but that
yeah,
whole evaluation of I started here, this is how bad it was, and I realized that I've got to do something about this and move forward with it, um, and at least put best efforts in. And this is in this is all in hopes that this will work out in the end. I think that's the other
yeah,
part that's a scary, frantic part to it as well. Though, is you like, I guess sometimes when it's kind of rubber on rubber, so to speak, or you feel like you're just kind of flailing around, not really moving. You're like, hopefully this is going to work out because this seems like this is kind of a mess right now. And I don't say any of that saying like that, and
yeah,
what I'm doing is like all that extreme or anything like that. I just think that in general in life, when um, you make a pretty drastic change on things, um, you go all in, and I think exactly what you said. I think you have to have a starting point of remembering where you kind of came from, why you're doing it, and where you're going. Like what we've talked to on multiple times. Like where are you going? Where are you going? Where are you trying to take this thing? Where are we turning this
yeah,
ship so we can make something else happen that is not happening currently that I don't like?
yeah. Yeah, I think really that part in the middle where like you feel like you've made the decision to do better, be better, go after something bigger, and then you're working towards that, but nothing has happened yet. Like you haven't gotten anything positive out of it. That can be especially difficult because you're saying, okay, here I am putting all this time in, doing all this extra stuff that like I didn't have to do before, and now I haven't seen any positive yet. So and
Yeah,
there's a little bit of questioning about like is positive ever going to come? Did I make the wrong decision? Is this the wrong option? So I think so that can weigh pretty heavily on you when you start saying, okay, I gave up this or that, or
yeah,
putting in all this work, and here's the current state of me, and it's not nothing's changed yet.
yeah.
All I'm doing is just the negative. Something else that I'd be curious about. So, like you going through boot camp. In boot camp, how many weeks was like the first part of boot camp? Is it 9 weeks, 12 weeks,
I think it was 10. I believe it was 10
10 weeks?
for basic training. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so, like what would that? So that's obviously got its own got its own set of challenges, and I think I'd be curious, like, how would you compare that experience to like the schooling portion of this that you're going through now? Because two totally different things, two totally different mindsets. One is maybe you can quit any time, and all you lose is the money that you paid for the learning, right? and the other one
Yeah.
is like you're not quitting unless you have some type of compelling medical reason or something.
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, when you were talking about what you had talked about, as far as keeping end result in mind, I would say the military is probably the best example I have of that in my life. I would think, and not really even thinking about it. Probably honestly, not until you just said what you'd said there. I'm kind of thinking of that now, because I know when I was going through it. Um, it's just kind of one of those things that sucks. Like it's not. There's no good way to put it. I guess. Like you know what I mean. You get
Yeah.
there. I think you get there, and it's the same thing about like you're excited before you go, and you know there's a build up. Like when you're talking to people about
Hmm.
it's something that you're just like, man, this is gonna be cool. This is gonna be neat. And you're telling people about it,
Yeah.
and then you know that it gets right upon you, and then you're just like, okay, it's here, it's time now, and then when you actually get into it, I think when you get initially past the shock, like the first, probably within the first week, it was like, okay, I'm here, I can't leave, and I'm stuck until this is over with, and I think
Yeah.
probably the first few weeks it was kind of just like, man, what am I doing? What am I into? And I think you, a lot of ways, in tough situations, I think your mind starts asking a lot of valid questions. Whereas, is that did I just make a really stupid decision, or,
Yeah.
um, what is this going to entail? And then I think a little bit farther into it, um, you either accept it or you continue to just kind of you know, whine around about it, I guess, so to speak, or just just keep kind of wallowing in a mud hole. I guess would be the term. Like, or you get up and you do something about it to where it's just like, okay, I've got I've got 10 weeks of this. It's gonna suck. It's not gonna be fun. People aren't gonna be nice, and I just got to get through it. So, and then
Yeah.
look more towards the each project or each day that you're getting into, kind of just make it through that day and focus on the small, the very small, minute. Like, okay, get past this, get past this, get past this, and you don't look at the long term. And I think it started to flow a little bit faster for me at that point in time when there was that realization as well. But I think getting through it and being done with it until you got to the end, like you knew that it was there. It's not. I mean, I didn't notice a lot of the like milestones for like, wow, I'm almost there. Other than till it was like the very end of like, okay, there's like a week left of it, and 10 weeks is really not all that long, but it feels
Yeah.
pretty long when you wake up
I
and
was
they're
gonna say when
yelling
you're
at
in it,
you, and you go to bed and they're
yeah,
yelling at you, and it's
they're
just
still
like,
yelling.
yeah, that's right, and your schedule is just kind of turned upside down. Everything that you know, everything that you do is it now you have no control at all over. I think that was a realization for sure. That's what made it more realistic to where it was just like, yeah, this is gonna suck for a little bit. So yeah, but I think I guess I would say to that, yeah, you put that in perspective pretty well. That was a good way to kind of put that, at least for me anyway, relatable to where it's you're going through it, and I think personally, anything that I've had to go through that I felt like was a little bit hard, the the going through it is obviously the toughest part, and even the little even the milestones you hit. I think if I could focus a little more on, where I started at and where I'm going with
Yeah.
this, I think it would make it a little easier for you, for me, or someone in general. But you really don't have that sense of accomplishment as far as the results go until it's completely done. Even when you hit like, okay, I'm a little bit closer, I'm a little bit closer, I'm a little bit closer. It's not until you're completely done, like you were just saying before. Like you're still not really getting a result until you're completely done with it. At least in
Yeah.
my experience. So
Yeah. Now, I guess from like a something like a boot camp perspective, I'm curious. Like so you mentioned there's kind of a time when you're in boot camp when you're like, okay, I'm here for the duration, unless unless something really really bad happens. But like, what were some of the other ways you kind of were able to cope through something like that? Because like 9 weeks, as you said, you're getting yelled at to wake up, yelled at to go to bed, and getting smoked a bunch.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, like, what? So, is it finding somebody that's kind of going along with you, has the same mindset? Is it avoiding conflict with and just kind of staying away from the troublemakers, or what's that look like?
Yeah, for sure. I think camaraderie with others that are kind of going through that pain or struggle, so to speak, or
Yeah,
whatever you want to call it. I think you can find camaraderie in other people and maybe that are going through that. But adaptability, I think, is definitely the other thing too. I think you genuinely have to realize that you know I like this is not fun, but I have to look at this from a perspective to where it won't last forever.
yeah,
Um, and I think that was something that was kind of helpful to me to where it was like this can't last forever. I think that's when it was the biggest part to where I could take it in and I was like, okay, I'm all right with this.
yeah,
This won't last forever. I think that was, and I didn't probably even realize as it being that either when I was going, kind of going through that either. I think it was more of a just like it will at some point stop. Like it will be
yeah,
over at some point. So, this is as long as I can just hang on, or at least hang on
yeah,
for a little bit longer. But whatever. I guess a little bit longer for each part of it. But I think other people for sure. You got other people that go through it. I think that's definitely what establishes um, memories and bonds and relationships with people when you're struggling with other people that you don't know at all, and you kind of go through that. I think there's something to be said about that. You don't ever forget those kind of experiences either. I think that's always something
yeah,
that you always remember. I'm sure there's things, multiple things. You've done lots of different things in your life, but I think you will find that the things that were the hardest and things you were just like what. I think you get just so kind of just like this is so ridiculous that you then begin to the person that you're going through it with is just like yeah what a
yeah,
fun circus we're dealing with here, and then you either make jokes about it and try and figure out how to make it through it, or you just like I said you're pouty about it and then you're completely miserable. So
yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great correlation to kind of the grind portion that we've been talking about as well. Because so I was an outsider. Obviously, I didn't go to boot camp along with you, but I remember kind of the pregame speech that you get from the recruiter side of things, and like, hey, here's all the wonders of going and doing this, and I think there's the boot camp side, which is like 9 or 10 weeks, and then after that, you went to I can't remember what type of school, which is basically your specialization school for your job. And that
yep.
was how long was that? Was that 6 weeks or something or 10 weeks?
Yeah, so that was supposed to be about they were supposed to be 12 weeks, and they call that AIT
Yeah, T, that's right.
in
Thank
the
you.
Army side of it. And but that they closed the school up in Aberdeen, so I did end up I did end up having to transfer up to Fort Lee, Virginia, to finish out the rest of it. But it went from about 12 weeks to about 20 weeks.
Even better. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, but
right.
so like so again, being on the outside though, so we see the pregame hype, and I mean I think I recall like you're kind of excited to go. I mean, as an outsider, as a friend, I mean, you always get kind of excited for things that your friends are excited about, so you get excited, and then the next time we see you is at basically the graduation piece with all the like the ceremony and that kind of the cool stuff and the neat looking
Yeah,
uniforms that you all are wearing and marching around and doing stuff that you've been got for the basically represents the training that you've got during that time frame. But like that whole piece in the middle, like I didn't see it, I didn't experience it, none of us did. But that was all the ugly, right? Like that's the we see the
yeah,
beginning, which is all like the fancy glossy words and all the lies that the recruiters tell you, and
yeah,
then we see the end, which is the shiny, pretty thing. And like, man, that looks like that is pretty cool to be out there marching around in the smoke and doing all these left, right, about face things. And I think, I mean, to me, great kind of corollary for what the people who are not going through what you're going through sometimes see. They just see the man. Look, and I think it goes back to that whole completion thing where we often see the end result of people, whatever that work is, and we don't have any idea what it took them to get there. And I think
Yeah.
you're in the middle of that deal now with school and kind of trying to move forward with that credential piece, but that to me just kind of stands out as you're talking through that because again, being an outsider, it looks super cool when you're marching around in those fancy fancy um, sharply polished uniforms, but all that however many weeks in the middle, I was not a part of, so I don't have the same outlook on it at all. I'm like, man, what a cool thing you get to do, Matt.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. No, that's there's something. I mean, that's really good. Good point as well. There's something to be said about that. But I was listening to, and I was thinking about that last night. I was listening to the Wes Huff and Billy Carson interview.
Oh, nice.
And I didn't realize that was Wes Huff was the one. So I had seen him before because you and me were talking the other
Nice.
day, but I
Hmm.
didn't realize you told me about that interview before and how bizarre it kind of was. Um, but something that I thought was pretty relatable after listening to all of that, you know, the one guy made proclaims, you know, that he had traveled all over the world and done all these things and
Yeah.
kind of made all these statements about all bold statements, I might add, of just nonsense after you kind of find out a lot of it. But anyway, he just kind of said all these things that he had done, but he was more so just saying about things he had done, like without anything behind it. And then you get someone on there that has, you know, pretty well pretty well given up most of their life to study like theology and historian artifacts and events of like Christianity, and it's clear that the one has put in all this time into it, and you look at it and you're just like, man, that's pretty awesome. Like I'd love to have that kind of knowledge on the
Yeah.
Bible and the things that you know from the past, and he's just pulling out, you know, debunk after debunk on this guy, and just like that's crazy. That's false. What you're saying is a lie. I'm
Yeah.
I'm trying to respectfully say that you're a liar. Everything that you're saying
Yeah.
right now is garbage. But I was thinking about that, and I was just like, you know, he had all that knowledge, and I think that whole interview pretty much blew him up. That Wes Huff, and I don't think he was intentionally trying to be blown up. I think he was just trying to prove a truth. But I
Yeah.
guess where I'm going with this is the whole thing in that to where is a lot of people probably look at that and it's like, man, that's some pretty cool knowledge that this guy has, and I mean he's just throwing it out there one after another. It didn't really matter what the topic was. He had information on it. He had he had facts behind it, and he could also state that where things were coming from, and then he was able to prove the wrong. But I guess again, I'm getting starting to get sidetracked. But the whole point behind that is that wasn't just from him, you know, just talking about it or
Yeah.
just saying that I have an answer because I'm quick on my feet and I'm good at talking. It was
Yeah.
hard work
And then
and
chat
effort
GPT it.
and time. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Like I think the whole time they were talking, you know, if you ask me about something at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I just woke up and I'm trying to get myself pulled together, if I know a lot about it, I should be able to give you a solid answer. Like if I know a
Yeah.
lot about it, and I guess that's all the more that I'm saying to where it's just like, that is I think living proof behind like everybody wants to everybody wants to claim fame or claim success, and
Yeah.
and wants to throw all the things out there about how they did it and look at me, but there are very few of them out there that have actually put in the effort and the time and the work and have done it, and you can see that they've actually done it as well. It shows,
Yeah.
like, because it's
For
it's hard
sure.
to be an expert at something that you're doing, or it's hard to be like a craft, like a craftsman at your craft. Like I think I don't know. There's something to be said about that.
Yeah, yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. There's all like we just see that in that kind of final glossy, not glossy, but at least very public, and I mean, I guess you can now say very viral moment where he's presenting all this information. But we all we saw was that we didn't see the 20 years of study that or more that kind of that led him to that moment. And I
Yeah,
think that on the one hand, you had someone who was kind of acting like they had done that 20 years of hard work, and then on the other side, you had someone who had done it, and you could pretty quickly see the difference when like actually when I don't even know if he said actually he would say okay in the Greek it says this, and I have that document. He would reach over his left shoulder and pull the book off the shelf, and you're
yeah,
like, yeah, you kind of felt you you shouldn't feel bad because the other guy was as you said in many cases just simply lying, but you kind of felt bad when someone was that outmatched when they thought they had some knowledge or maybe they just thought they could speak with confidence and trick people. But yeah, that's
yeah,
a good point. Yeah, I think yeah, I think there's a lot of that in life that you that I myself I don't think about, and I in some ways I boiled it down in the past to that well they must be really talented or something like that. You know
yeah,
you hear that word that phrase a lot where they you've just been so blessed to have the talent, and then you know like when you start trying to learn or do something you think well dang it's not doesn't have a whole lot to do with talent as it does get out in here and just beating your head off the wall until you're like oh wow this thing works that thing doesn't or here's how I actually was able to understand this concept. So
yeah,
that's a great point. But so
yeah.
I guess one of the other things would be if we're talking about maybe grind activities, what's some stuff that besides that idea that what you're doing has value and moves you forward towards your goal? What are some other ways maybe that you've found to be able to kind of stay sane and not feel like you're just kind of abandoning those important relationships in your life? Like, how are you managing that? How are you getting the thing done, the extra thing done that you're working towards your goal with, while also not saying, okay, babe, I love you, but I'll see you in 9 weeks or whatever it is.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm probably not a good person to ask about that. I don't know if I've been doing a great job of not letting other commitments fall to the wayside. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think
but
there has to be some change. It's not like I mean, you're dealing with the same 24-hour buck at a time. So I mean, there's going to be obviously less of that time you can dedicate. But so, not trying to put you on the spot there, but just curious how that's going for you.
yeah, I mean, it's been, I mean, not terrible. Definitely different to adjust schedules and all the above there. But I would say how has it been kind of going through and dealing with it. Um, it, it was tough first, I think, with kind of the adjustment and just trying to figure out what could work and what couldn't, and what I was able to do, and what commitments, like I said, I could make. But I think what has helped make it easier is again what you said is the end result, or the end goal and end result, so to speak, in mind. Um, that I just gotta buckle down and kind of do this, and kind of just let the family know that this is where I'm at with it, because it's kind of tough. I mean, you've got young ones, and you've had young ones over the years when you go through that. So it's hard to explain to a 3-year-old that no, I can't do that,
Oh
man.
yeah.
There's no time for me to mess around right now. I got stuff
Hmm.
that I'm supposed to be taking care of, and he doesn't really understand that, right? But I think
Yeah.
I think you just have to you definitely have to keep thinking towards the end result. I think the only
Yeah.
that's probably really the only thing that has been helpful for me, is just keep remembering that like I will finish up with this and I'll be done with it, but I have to kind of I have to make a change in what I'm doing right now, and focus as much as I can on what I'm supposed to be accomplishing, and sacrifice. I mean, that's probably just the easiest way I can probably put it. That understanding that I am going to sacrifice a lot of things right now until it's over and done with, and then remembering that hopefully it is just a short term piece that will suck for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Yeah, I think that's the some of the side effects is, and as I said, it's not it isn't that you're saying okay, you're no longer important. There is a finite bucket of hours, so that like the discretionary time you have, certainly you spend that with your children, but there's just not as much of it to spend. So it's just a little bit more difficult to have. And I think there's a lot of guilt that can arise from something like that, where you think, okay, that may contribute to part of that. Am I doing the right thing? Because I mean, I'm spending all this time doing all these things that are, and then you don't want it to be about just chasing a goal that is your own and not really for the betterment of your family. And I
Yeah.
think in the middle, sometimes, at least personally, I've had those situations where I think, what is this really just me being about me, or am I actually trying to move the ball forward for the long term so that I can have more flexibility and more time to actually be with my family.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Because I don't know, man. Every time that something different, you know, you take on like you we've talked about that before. You go through different seasons of life, and there's different change and different times of where you know obstacles or things will be coming along. Sometimes you just get hit with everything. There'll just be a bad patch of not
Yeah,
fun that goes along with while you're trying to accomplish something that you're doing. I don't know, man. So
yeah,
sometimes it can be a lot tougher than others. Maybe the tough thing that you're taking on could go a lot smoother if all the other life things weren't happening. That's also something to you know make you appreciate when you put the time and effort into something that there is an end result to the what is that, the storm will soon pass, I guess, so to speak.
there you go.
So you know that because that really, I think, brings out the fight in you of whether or not you've got it in you to do what you need to do.
Yeah,
That's something for me. Um, Sometimes is encouraging to where, like I said, where you're going through those tough times, and again, I know there's been multiple times I'm sure you've done that, but I think in your just behavior of you're so kind of just like okay, well, nothing worse can happen right now, and you're almost kind of just like crazy in your mind of just like almost like you want to laugh about the bad things that are happening, to where it's just like it's
yeah,
okay. This is like all these terrible things have kind of
yeah,
already happened. It can't really get worse than this, but it's I think it's a good thing though too, um, to give you every now and again, give you a little bit of, I don't know. I give you a little bit more fight, so to speak, to where it's just like I'm gonna get through this. Um, it just it just might take a little bit more time.
yeah, yeah, for sure. There is a big difference there, and I think as I was thinking through going when I was going to college and working through that myself, I remember back at that same time just writing some notes to myself from the future or to the future or whatever. And I think that there's a couple things that stood out to me. There was one, I think when you're in it, it felt worse than what it probably was. Like I think there's an idea in at least in my mind that okay, this is so bad right now. I'm not sure if I'm going to get through it. But then I think when you're through it, it feels probably probably less painful than what it actually was. So I think it's pretty easy to kind of overvalue the difficulty when you're in the middle of it. And you think, man, I like this was so terrible. And then only when you get the other side, and when you're probably for me, when I'm thinking about what's the next thing I'm going to take on, that's when I have
Yeah,
forgotten how difficult it actually was, and
yeah,
or how hard it was maybe on my family. But I think so. Thinking through this, I was trying to pull up one of the notes that I was sending. This was in 2009, And I was talking about, I was just writing down what I was working on, and I was working on studying for a CLEP exam, which is one of those things you test out of a class with. And I was working on three of those CLEP exams that I had to take in order to be able to graduate in that timeline I had set.
Yeah.
And I was talking about, okay, it's very tough to focus. The task list seems overwhelming, and it's going to be hard to try to like make this happen. And I'm not sure you're going to be able to graduate in the same schedule. And I think that all that stuff, again, looking back, I'm thinking that I mean, obviously it did happen, but
Yeah.
just it almost seems boring. I'm reading this note from one of the tougher parts of my life, and I'm thinking, sounds kind of boring, and why couldn't you just suck it up?
Yeah.
And not that that's how it is. I'm just saying I think that there is a tendency though when you're in the middle of it to make it big, to make it feel big, and then when you're through it, just to make it feel like nothing. So I think that there's value one in both getting perspective and when you're in it to say, okay, this is tough, but it is a part of life that I'm moving forward with. It aligns with where I'm going. It's not just me being a selfish jerk and ignoring everything, but it's also not the end of the world. I mean, people do this stuff. That's the
Yeah.
thing that kind of helps me not feel like such a like a special bear.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
other people are out there doing this. And the next thing is like immediately after that is once you kind of get through it is remember like, hey, one, acknowledge that you took on something. Like I mean, I'm proud of you for just being willing to step out and then step into it and try to do the best you can. It's not like you're not aiming for C's in this deal. You're trying to figure it out and do the best you can. That is commendable by itself. So I think when you get to the end, and I think we have another week of class, and then of course the big exams that come after that. But when you
Yeah.
get to the end, though, I think it's also okay to say to step back and I don't want to say pat yourself on the back, but at least take a breath and acknowledge the success that you've had and having gone through that process. That's because that's a big deal. Because just because you're outside it, for that reason alone, your mind's going to be like, okay, whatever, on to the next thing. I think it's
Hmm.
worth pausing, kind of acknowledging that, and then of course maybe thinking through what it took to get you there. Like you said, acknowledge like valuing what the sacrifice that you had to make, that your family had to make to get to that point. So
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate that. I think to what you were saying as well. You're the process of things that you've been going through and you've gone through. Again, I think I don't know if it maybe said that or had talked about that before or not, but at one point in time you had told me one. I still think probably you probably need to patent it. It's a pretty good one, but you told me one time you said that all that's left is the work, and that's always been something that's been super relatable for me. When you told me that, I thought, man, that's a pretty good saying. That's a really good saying because exactly what you were just saying. You think that sometimes it's tougher than what it is when you're going through it. Typically, that's how you feel, and maybe there are other things kind of happening as well, but everybody else is doing it too. Everybody else is it has gone through it that is doing whatever it is that you're doing. For me, like
yeah,
I've been out of school and not been doing
yeah,
anything like this for years. I've got kids and here I jump back into it. I'm more of a hands-on kind of guy, and everything has kind of been book work. And I couldn't tell you how many times where I'm just like, man, I'm not retaining this information. It's kind of just going in one ear and out the other, and
yeah,
sometimes it's just downright boring when you're sitting there having to listen to it and try and figure out ways to put it
yeah,
together. But I think it goes back to that whole thing of like, yes, I mean it can be tough, but it can be done as well too. Like, how bad do you really want to do it? How bad do you want to make this work? Because I don't know. Like to me, it at this point in time, and it's been multiple times where I'm questioning like, is this something that like is it more than what I can actually handle? Like once I get past this, because there's a lot of knowledge that comes with that line of work. Which the classes that I'm taking obviously right now for the EMT stuff is that's just supposed to just be a stepping stone to um, what the initial plan was to get into, and they're not. I mean, most people it's really not that big of a deal, but um, I'm not much of a book smart kind of guy as it is so to speak. But I think that I guess where I'm going with this is that you can just give up on it, or you have to decide that I'm going to at least see this through. So whether or not I'm able to do anything with it, or everything shifts and I don't use any of that, like I still need to try and see it through, like at least make it through and attempt to finish it and get it completed. But I think that's the hard part. I think I struggle with when you're doing something, you definitely have a large sense of fear to failure. I don't know if that's been
Yeah.
things for you or not, but you put all the work and effort into it, and you're just like, man, I just really gonna hate this if I can't pass this, or I'm really not getting what I need to get out of it. I think that's something that was a struggle thus far for me in some of this. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Like when you're trying to get something done that has to do with what your goal is as an end result for something in life or job related, or what it has to do with, like I think you value what other people think about you failing or being successful at it, but mostly you're mostly yourself. Like I think within you, you just thought you don't want to fail. So anyway, what's your thoughts on that?
I think maybe for better or worse, I sometimes don't really can't. I think that my assumption is I will figure something out. Like that if it's worthwhile. I mean, and I'm talking about relatively straightforward things. I'm not creating a better light bulb or anything. But the I think for me that's probably a dangerous thing as well. Where I think, okay, I'm just going to jump in and then whatever it takes, we'll sort it out on the way. And I think that can really make for some bad planning because you you can jump into a lot of things pretty fast, and then you got a lot of things to figure out. But I do think that there is that kind of weight that it's almost like you can't fail. Like I certainly can't just not get this done, right? There is no plan B, and sometimes that I feel like that does help motivate, but it also does create a lot of pressure. It puts a lot on yourself to say, okay, if this is the way forward, then I've got to make that happen. Um, for better or worse, like whatever that takes, is it's gonna have to be done. So that again, I think that's something that I've used with both positive and negative side effects historically. But
Sure, that's good, no doubt. And I guess another question, because you kind of asked me some of these as well. How have you felt? And kind of just circling back to the one of the ones that kind of give you an opportunity to answer some of those as well. But what has it been like for you? If as you've been going through different things, to what has been helpful for you when you know you're trying to make a schedule work, and balance your time, and when you're kind of in the middle of going through it, so to speak, what has been a useful tactic or tool or something that has helped you, when you're trying to make something work when it doesn't quite feel like it is working, so to speak.
yeah, yeah, I think a couple of things are one would be that the planning piece, and especially with a family, I think it's that was really when I started learning that I could do a lot more than I thought. One, but secondly, I could also still get time with my family because I think when you have this kind of big open perspective on time and you're not really paying attention to how you're spending it, you waste a lot of it. And I think that starting out with like a planner, like which is, I mean, I really didn't start a planner until I was going to school and working full time at the same time, like you are. But I think that's when I realized like I've been wasting a lot of time. I could have been doing a lot more in general, either with my family or in professional or in a community, whatever that is. That was kind of eye opening to me that I think probably spent more time with we just had one child at that time with my child when I was in school than I did before, simply because previously I had not been managing my time at all, which is that's a bit of a tragic thing to say, but I think that was really the chief outcome for me was if you plan your time, you can do a lot more with your life than what you thought you could do, first off, but you can also make some of these other things priorities that you weren't able to make priorities while doing other things like going to school. And I mean, I think for me, so for school, and we talked about this before a little bit, but my goal was to try to finish school in my bachelor's degree in something like 2 years, and I didn't really have any college credits, so I tried to figure out a plan from okay, how do I go from zero and I had a GED to getting into college and then finishing the college in a certain amount of time, and not wanting to go through some of the remedial courses that I probably thought I would have to take. I decided I'd have to do a multifaceted approach of testing out of classes with these exam things. Some of them are called CLEPs, and basically you can go study a topic and you get a book, essentially a textbook. You study the topic and then you just go take a test, and they say, "Yep, you passed. We'll give you full credits for that course." So because I wanted to do the college in an expedited time frame, I didn't have the I really didn't have the money to do that, but the courses themselves were like $100. So I could go get 3 college credits, which would normally have cost me $1,200 or $900 maybe then for like $100, and I could get the 3 credits. So I tested out of a bunch of those classes. So I was going to college full time, and then I was taking I think I averaged something like 21 credits or 24 credits a semester at the community college through the extra classes I was taking there. And then when I went to Liberty, for for the university for the 4 year degree, I was able to take college classes there at the university, and then also take extra classes back at the community college I was taking. So I think at one point I finished 35 or 37 college credits in a semester, in a single semester of college, which would be something like 2.5 semesters worth of college. And I think
Wow.
again, but I'm only saying that because while I was doing that, I was also spending more time more focused attention time with my child than I had at any point prior to that. Because I think again, if you really focus and you say, okay, this is the thing, and I didn't have horses and cows back then either. So that I mean, they don't have the stuff outside that you feel like you have to go do. But to me, it was really eye opening. Where if I will plan out my time and focus that time and with that singular motivation, because for me, I had been told to work the guy at work. Um, I was working in IT, and all I had was essentially a GED and some technical certifications. And the boss that we had there, he was talking to me, so he was actually like the boss's boss, someone high up. But anyway, he brought me into his office one day and basically said, "I should fire you because you don't have the credentials that you need to work here. You're supposed to have a degree, and every year I write an exception for letter for you, or not." And this is like 2 years in, so each time I have to write an exception letter for you, and I don't want to write another one. Is what he had kind of told me back then, so which was great for me because I was like, well, I better get a degree and quickly, or I'm going to get fired out of my job. I mean, again, back then, not realizing I probably could have just gotten a different job at a non-government place that didn't
Yeah.
require a degree. That stuff you never put two and two together when you're first starting out. So yes, that really lit a fire under me. But again, I would, and this is a long rambling answer to your question, but I would have never known. I don't think that time could be compressed like it can be. Like you can do
Yeah.
so much more with your life when you start on these things and start figuring out what you can do. But I also think that you can do so much more with your personal life and the values that you want to kind of pass on to your children, the time you want to spend with your children. Because I think that that's really the key is, and this is the last thing I'll say, but like the people who influence our children are simply the people who spend the time with them. That's what's going to have the most impact on them. That's why like we talk about the screens and things like that's really the thing is if you let the screen be the thing they spend the most time with, obviously that's going to have the most impact in life. If it's their friends, that's going to be the most impactful. So I think for me that was just a huge mindset shift where I realized one there was so much more I could do with my time than I thought possible. Like I'm not a smart person, but I did realize then that suddenly okay, if you actually just pay attention to how you spend your time, you can do like all these different things, kind of like your budget, right?
Yeah.
When you actually count, suddenly things start appearing. But that was to me the game changer, and that was a long answer. I didn't mean to make it about like college 10 years ago, well, more than that, 15 years ago. But I think that's really was the key thing that there are ways you can get better and be better and do better with your family and with those things that matter long term if you're paying attention and looking for them.
Yeah. No, that's really good, man. No, yeah, I don't think by any means it was rambling. I think to a couple of those points that I think you definitely underplay a lot of times some of the things that you've accomplished as well. And I've always been uh, super impressed at how you're able to pull some of it off for sure. Like I think some of those examples are living proof of 100% it is possible. I mean, I
Yeah,
know at one point in time when you were doing the 35 credits semester one, that is super impressive for someone without a job. That is kind of out of this world impressive, or more of a how the heck did you pull that off while you were working a 40 to 50 hour job? I don't even know how many hours you were working, but I know it was a full time job, so we can at least
yeah,
account for 40 hours a week, and then 35 credited hours or 35 credited classes for a semester is pretty crazy. And then on top of that, you managed to figure out a way to spend time with your wife and your kid. Um, that's definitely a again living proof that it can be done, and that you can figure out pretty quickly whether or not your schedule has holes in it, and it can put to bed all your excuses for not having time as well. Because
yeah.
I mean,
That's right.
but again, like I said, I think that also um, brings out the clarity and a realization in yourself that you've got a dog in you, so to speak. I kind of like that. I've always liked that
That's
term of
right.
the dog in you to do the fight, because I think when your back's against the wall and you feel like you're going through all the things that can't get any worse, you can be pretty wildly shocked at what you're able to accomplish. And I feel like
Yeah,
some of the stuff that you'd asked me about, I'd answered some of the ways that brief ways of emotionally how you can kind of change your mindset, but I think you had a lot of
yeah,
ways in multiple different areas of your life to where you actually showed the work. And I mean, again, and impressive in general, but I mean, not only like just as as the getting the 2 year and then bachelor's degree, and you also have masters, right? You have the master's degree.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep,
Yeah, and I would say the process kind of worked the whole, and I do know also that you had a full time job for all of those milestones in your life, along with the other things that you've kind of done. So, yeah, no, that's a good point. I think that kind of goes to show just what what you realistically can can make happen when you have to,
yeah,
and what you're able to use. Like there's ways out there. There's excuses for everything, but there's definitely ways out there that you can make something happen, that could be a lot tougher portion of your life to where you're still managing to make it happen, to where you're stretched thin, as opposed to just giving the answer that I don't have time. So
yeah,
anyway,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I think that's probably maybe has brought us full circle around on the grind aspect. But thanks for having the conversation. And as we've been talking, you're kind of in the middle of it, and hopefully this is like even talking through it helps maybe bring a little bit of perspective to where you're at, hang in there, and
yeah,
almost to the finish line.
yeah, man. Yep, for sure. Yep, looking forward to getting back to the normal for sure.
Yeah,
Maybe ride my
riding
horses a
some more
little bit.
horses.